He identifies alcohol as the first highly concentrated, purified drug, a synthetic drug, when we distilled it. We
Okay, now
in a
this
sense,
is an important point because who distilled it? Well, it was
alchemists.
the fucking alchemists, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Right? And here's the thing with these bloody alchemists is that they were trying to they were operating off the correct me if I'm wrong here, Jack, but they were operating off the assumption that there's somehow like that the spirit is is in the material body, and that was their fundamental flaw. So when they were trying to distill these things, like these tinctures and stuff that they were making, and ultimately for the elixir of life, they were, I guess, in a way, doing it under a perverted premise. So Terry does not like the alchemists.
No, what they started was this terrible trend of decontextualizing drugs. So before the isolation of spirits, he seems to be. Of course, alcohol is a pale imitation of magic mushrooms or of the psychedelic experience
mead,
in general. But
like alcoholic honey, like mead.
Yeah, like mead.
And early grapes.
It has some link to the natural world, but when you make a synthetic drug, when you isolate the alcohol from that, you decontextualize it and you strip its ability to reconnect you
concentrating
with
ethanol.
the great goddess. He
and
says
just making straight up spirits like brandy and shit.
Yeah. He says, just as heroin addiction was the malignant flower that sprang from the relatively benign habit of opium use, so distilled alcohol changed the sacred out of the brewer and the vintner into a profane economic engine for the consumption of human hopes. That's quite a denunciation.
Yeah. So, and he extends that logic to all synthetic drugs, except does he apply to acid?
LSD. No, he's a big fan of LSD. So that's an okay synthetic drug.
Okay, so Hoffman nailed it with LSD. All the other synthetics, crack cocaine, heroin, so opium, mate,
relatively benign.
You're okay. Relatively benign. Distill opium and inject it. You're out.
Which is interesting because he talks about the opium wars between the British Empire and China as really bad things, which, at least to my understanding, they were terrible. But
they're pretty bad.
Yeah, they're terrible. But he then also says that opium is relatively benign. And you think, well, I mean, you can have one or the other. You can have opium wars were really terrible.
No.
Opium is relatively benign.
The pictorial evidence seems incontrovertible, Jack.
I see. I see where you're coming from. This is what I mean. He says a lot of things in this book, and many of them don't work together.
He says a lot of things. It's almost as if
he took too many drugs.
He took a lot of psychedelics throughout his life and didn't really have anybody around him who wanted to call him out on his nonsense. I think a person like this only becomes the person he is because he never, I bet you he never ever he's always just surrounded by people who agreed with him.
Yeah, he was probably surrounded by other wake and bake types.
I don't think he. Yeah, and he.
No one pulled him aside and said, "All right, Terence, just calm it down a bit."
Just, mate, come on, man. You haven't been to work in 3 weeks.